will we will be free. For when the rising tide is turned in every London quarter, Parliament comes crashing down with Robert's Rules of Order.
Thursday, October 15th. Okay. Oh, bylaws amendments. Okay. Here we go. This has got a lot of words to it.
Oh God, okay.
Notice has been given of an amendment to the bylaws that will strike out a certain section. A member wishes to retain this section with changes that may be outside the scope of the notice. The member should A. Give advance notice of the changes he proposes. B. Get the group to vote down the original amendment and then offer the changes he proposes. C. Offer his changes as amendments to the amendment originally proposed. Did we just see this like last week?
Maybe.
I think we might have. D. Promise to offer the changes he proposes if the group will vote down the amendment, so strike out.
A. Am I wrong?
No, you're right, actually.
Okay. Because you have to have notice. You have to have notice for bylaws. That's the only reason.
Okay, yeah. Now, before I go to the citation, let's just talk this through a second. Okay, so we have an amendment to strike out a section, and somebody wants to say, no, let's keep it.
But it's to bylaws. That's important.
Correct.
And they gave notice.
And we've seen similar to this last week where we were talking about something rather with the amendments still retaining after.
Right, but that wasn't to bylaws. But what we had talked about was before you vote on the motion to strike, people get to change it to something more acceptable first.
Which is related to this.
Related to this, but you're dealing with the issue of notice because it's bylaws.
That's why I said I think we've seen this before. But yeah, advance notice, right. And even if it doesn't require, it's a good courtesy.
But this raises another question to bring up to the priesthood.
Yeah.
Let's say we weren't dealing with bylaws.
Yeah.
Basically what they're saying here is this person is going outside the language of what is proposed to be struck. In other words, it's not strictly germane because they're going outside of it.
Right.
Can you do that if this wasn't talking about bylaws?
Well, it raises the question, is it germane because it's referring to the same piece of it, or is it not germane because it's the reverse of the purpose of the amendment?
That doesn't matter because it's not converting it into something else per se. If this wasn't bylaws, I think the answer, since I already looked at it, well, let me look at the choices. Okay. If this wasn't bylaws, I believe the answer would be D. Because he can't make those changes because it's going outside the germanity. Yeah.
Well, I guess my question there is what's the scope of the germanity? Is it because of location or because of context?
Both.
Okay.
You can't amend words that aren't part of the original amendment when you're amending an amendment. You can't go outside the amendment.
Even if it was offered as a substitute?
They didn't say that though.
I know. I'm just. I'm not doing that to rib.
No,
I'm not doing that to rib you.
No. As a substitute, it definitely is a substitute. Yeah. But I want to ask the priest this because if the whole idea is to make it, as we talked about last week, the best version of itself before you vote to strike it.
Right.
Sometimes you got to move words around a little bit on the ends.
Right.
So I am going to ask the priest this, but I think what they'll tell me is D, that you'd have to just say, please vote this down, and if you vote it down, I will offer X.
Because logically speaking, A we already said is the right answer. Get the group to vote down the amendment. That's just lobbying the group and off. That's almost the same thing. It's related to D. D is B says get the group to vote them down. You're lobbying the group to do that, then offer the changes. D says I will offer the changes if you vote it down. They're basically saying the same thing.
Well, and in B you're not telling the group though. You're just lobbying for them to vote it down, and you're not necessarily saying if you vote it down, I'll do this.
Right, but
you have it in your head, but you haven't.
But then, but the question is, C, offer the changes, amendments to the original strike. But that's where we're getting the mess up. But anyway, getting confusion up. But anyway, back to this. We said A. Yeah. You said A.
Because of notice, because it's bylaws.
A is the correct answer. So this goes to 595 in the old version, which is way in the hell in the
Amendment
back.
of bylaws, right? 57.
Hold on, let me get there. This is it is amendment of bylaws. Oh, Actually, right there. 595, 34 to 35, under amending a proposed amendment to bylaws is the section. Okay, so it's about a page beyond that. Starts with amendments to strike out a sentence.
Okay, so in the new version, it's 5713. I'm just giving that for people
that's cool.
following along.
No, that's cool. We got to cross-reference these folks, otherwise people go, what? Okay, here's what it says. It carries over to the next page. Amendments to strike out a sentence, paragraph, or section deserve special care. No shit. In such cases, the existing bylaw is not itself open to consideration, but only by the amendment. If notice is given to strike out a provision in the bylaws and, flip the page, some members feel it should be retained with certain changes whose substance would be outside the scope of that notice, those members should immediately give notice of the amendments to the existing provisions which they think are advisable. Otherwise, friends of the existing provision will be cut off from the opportunity to work out compromises for its partial retention by perfecting the existing language.
That last sentence didn't make any sense, but
okay, the friends of the existing provision part, what they're talking about, people want to keep it.
Yeah, but what do they mean by for its partial? I think
they want to keep the parts they want to keep and fix the rest of it, and do that offline prior to the it's actually being heard and voted on. Is what they're getting.
Yeah.
at.
Okay. It's just weird language.
Yeah,
I'm a friend of this provision.
So did that change any over there? Okay, it's the same.
Stayed the same.
Okay. Yeah. So what they're saying there is that because you have notice to do the original strike, if you want to keep the original and amendment, you need to provide notice for that also. Is what it comes down to.
And because it's bylaws.
And for consistency's sake, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't Pearl Harbor anybody. So. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Just a lot of words, but it makes sense. At least this one was written by someone who actually knows how to write a sentence. So, okay.
Me and my drifting audio.
Here comes the dog. There goes the dog.
I'm enjoying that way
too much. It's a running gag, folks.
She's such a chicken.
We will be free for when the rising tide has turned in every London quarter. Parliament comes crashing down with